In his book, Apollo's Arrow, Nicholas Christakis discusses the social and medical impacts of a variety of diseases, but this is mostly framing for his primary concern, COVID-19. Christakis posits that, like previous pandemics, COVID will be deeply transformative, and its ramifications will not be limited to 1 or 2 countries or 1 or 2 years. The impacts will be global and ring out for decades. Connected to this, Christakis posits a few ways in which plagues end, both in a medical sense as well as a social sense. Christakis' ultimate contention, however, is that plagues only end once a critical number of people accept that it is over. There are several ways in which plagues medically or biologically end. One way is that the plague is far too virulent, or that there are far too few hosts. As such, the plague ends when it has burned through all possible victims, killing itself along with its hapless hosts. This could be seen in various virgin soil outbreaks, particularly in the Americas, that left behind only the wreckage of civilizations. Truly apocalyptic level events. The opposite of this kind of end is one in which human beings, using medical knowledge, intentionally wipe out a disease. This can be seen with the utter eradication of smallpox in the wild, as well as the targeting of polio to such an extent that the once dreaded disease is now negligible in the world. However, this approach is difficult to do in terms of time, resources, and manpower, and nearly impossible with diseases with multiple vectors. Another set of ways plagues can end are examples of evolution or even coevolution. Diseases become endemic insofar as more and more people develop immunities to them, and the diseases themselves change to be less deadly, and thus can propagate wildly, though only considered mere nuisances now. This could be seen in the common cold or annual flus. Epidemic diseases that are often considered mere nuisances by most people, and who likely are the descendants of once deadly plagues. This process can be accelerated using vaccines by a large enough population to achieve a herd immunity. This result, becoming endemic, is most likely to occur with diseases that have many vectors of transmission and will likely be the fate of COVID-19. Future generations will likely be pestered by a disease that killed millions. COVID will always be with us. Another alternative, particularly with virulent diseases, is human coevolution. One can see this in the examples of sickle cell anemia or even multiple sclerosis, though debilitating genetic abnormalities nevertheless offer protection from malaria or cholera. Considering the time scale on which human evolution occurs on, it is difficult to say that this would be the end result of COVID. While there are many biological and medical ways for a plague to end, it must be remembered that plagues are social events as much as biological. What people know and feel about the disease, the authorities, and each other do much to determine whether or not the plague has socially ended. For instance, the seasonal flu is arguably a pandemic disease, The distinction between seasonal flu and pandemic flu, as made by the CDC, seems to be rather arbitrary. Though the seasonal flu can infect millions around the world and leave thousands dead, it is largely treated as a nuisance, an annual inconvenience, a fact of life. The deadliness of a disease seems to determine whether people consider it a plague. Similarly, as was noted earlier in these videos, smallpox was often treated as a mere fact of life. It was just accepted that children would catch it, and it was only natural that some of them would die. Closely related, if a plague has been going on for long enough, it is often treated as just a part of life, and then conveniently forgotten by most. Mere facts of life are often overlooked and ignored. One can see this with malaria or HIV, deadly and virulent diseases that the average person in the West does not pay much heed to. Rather, the focus is on diseases that take thousands of lives every year. Attention is often focused on the relatively rare Ebola or Zika. Deadliness, time, and distance seem to contribute to what people believe are plagues and what are inconveniences or mere facts of life. Furthermore, cultural values play a big role in deciding, for many, whether a plague is over. As Christakis notes, debates over masks was largely an American phenomenon. Those who are opposed are in favor of freedom, and those who are in favor of masks are signaling their virtue, or so the narratives go. Yet these feelings of frustration and concerns of governmental power are not solely in the United States. One can look to the anti-lockdown and anti-vaccine mandate protests in Canada, France, Germany, Lebanon, Israel, New Zealand, and Britain, among many other nations. Christakis notes this directly, though only writing from the vantage point of late 2020. As the vaccine is made more available, as more variants reduce its virulence, and as it becomes more endemic, many will treat it as if the plague is over, even while millions of people are still at deadly risk from exposure. Perhaps many only believe something to be a plague if it is actually dangerous to themselves. Another, perhaps strange possibility exists, that for many, the plague will not end. There's been an ongoing discussion in recent months of people choosing to wear masks, even when they are no longer in danger, or even after the plague has been declared over by health officials. Christakis makes a compelling argument that has been closely supported by the rest of these videos. Pandemic diseases are not only biological, medical phenomena. They are also deeply social and have serious implications for human societies and cultures. How they respond to the disease and how the disease shapes their attitudes and beliefs. In a similar way that many pandemic diseases have co-evolved with human beings, it seems also that diseases have co-evolved with our cultures and societies.